The story begins sometime in the 2000s in the small town of Eastbrook, where we meet Hank Wallace, a talented high school football quarterback and the pride of his school. Life seemed perfect for Hank. He was dating Stacy, a girl drawn more to wealth and fame than to true love. Yet, Hank genuinely cared for her. Meanwhile, we're introduced to a strange substance known as ICK. No one knows where it came from. Some believe it fell from a meteor, others think it leaked from a secret government lab. Whatever its origin, the ICK spread quietly across the world. It wasn't dangerous at first. People could clean it away, but it would always grow back, so eventually, everyone just ignored it and carried on with life. Back in Eastbrook, Hank's days remained bright. On prom night, he even encouraged Stacy to dance with an Asian classmate who was standing alone, simply because Hank felt sorry for the guy. Everything seemed fine until a big game changed Hank's life. During the match, he broke his leg, possibly because of the strange ICK, though he'd also been drinking the night before. That same night, Hank saw Stacy with the Asian boy Ted Kim, and his world collapsed. His sports career ended, and Stacy left him, chasing the wealth and status Ted could offer. Hank's troubles piled up. He ended up working as a cashier in a superstore, while Stacy married Ted, who was now successful and wealthy. Not long after, Hank's father, who owned a small bar, died of a heart attack, leaving Hank completely alone. The string of failures pushed Hank into heavy drinking. He worked as a school janitor until a former teacher encouraged him to finish his degree. With effort, Hank eventually became a science teacher. Stacy moved on with her life and had a teenage daughter, Grace. She had completely moved on from Hank, but he still loved her and could never forget her. The film mixes in plenty of subtle comedy that's best experienced on screen, so this recap focuses on the serious side of the story. 18 years passed. Social media ruled a new generation, and Hank settled into a quiet routine. Grace, now one of his students, often reminded him of Stacy whenever he saw her in class. Meanwhile, the mysterious ICK continued to spread worldwide. People were increasingly uneasy, and politicians even tried to use the ICK as a tool to win elections. Opinions about the substance differed, but most still refused to treat it as a real threat. Among Hank's colleagues was Sofia Diaz, the Spanish teacher who liked him, though Hank never saw the relationship as anything serious. We're then introduced to a few new characters. Heather, one of Grace's friends, has a crush on a boy named Griffin. Grace herself is dating Dylan, a guy with bad intentions who only wants to use her, something Grace hasn't yet realized. Grace's parents, now wealthy from their real estate business, hope she'll move to a bigger city, but Grace loves her hometown and wants to stay. Dylan, however, keeps pressuring her to leave. Hank considers reopening his late father's bar. During some paperwork, when Kim, Stacy, and Grace visit, Hank learns something shocking. Grace might actually be his daughter, since he and Stacy were together shortly before their breakup. He keeps this discovery to himself. The film shows how Kim and Stacy enjoy their rich lifestyle, while Grace quietly rejects their obsession with money. One night, Hank brings home a ring light and senses movement behind him. The ICK has grown alarmingly close, but as soon as he switches on the light, it freezes. Curious, Hank experiments and discovers that the substance doesn't grow under UV light, only in darkness. The next day, Hank tries to talk with Grace, but both she and Dylan find his interest odd, almost like he's crossing a line. Hank can't explain the real reason, that she might be his daughter, so he begins to consider a DNA test. That night, while Hank was at the bar, a strange man wandered in, even though the place wasn't open yet. His body looked oddly distorted, The alien substance had clearly infected him. At first, Hank offered him wine, but things turned frightening when the man suddenly grabbed a cat and began to change. Tentacles burst from his body as the ick consumed him. Seizing an opening, Hank used an electrical shock to kill the creature. Meanwhile, a group of high school students, including Grace, were at a party. Grace drank heavily, and Dylan hoped to take advantage of her. The ick, once harmless, had evolved. Hank called the police, but the officers who arrived, friends of his, were already infected. They spoke in strange, almost worshipful tones about the ick. They forced Hank into their car, where he found Sophia, the Spanish teacher, also infected. They tried to convert him, but Hank quickly put on a mask for protection. Sophia's body erupted into tentacles, yet Hank managed to escape the car unharmed. Fleeing through the night, Hank realized that Ick had become intelligent and was now infecting animals as well as humans, especially active in darkness. Desperate, he drove to the house where Grace and her friends were partying, warning them that the Ick was spreading and killing people. The teens only laughed, thinking he was joking. Hank begged Grace to leave the party with him, but she told him to go away. He didn't force her. Dylan tried to take advantage of Grace, but she refused, so he turned his attention to another girl. Moments later, the Ick attacked, killing several teens and infecting others, Dylan among them. The substance spread rapidly. Grace was asleep when the chaos erupted, but Hank arrived just in time. They watched in horror as the Ick swarmed everywhere, yet a sudden burst of bright light froze it in place. The military had arrived, moving survivors to a safe zone. Still, many townspeople refused to believe the danger and even staged protests, highlighting how people often cling to reckless opinions. The military struggled to contain the threat. Hank suggested using UV light, but Dr. Althea dismissed him, explaining that the government already knew UV light was the Ick's weakness. They simply lacked the power to deploy it widely. By morning, everything looked calm, but many who had been infected overnight now appeared normal. Grace noticed Dylan acting strangely. Once eager to leave town, he suddenly insisted he never wanted to go. As night fell, Dylan grew violent and attacked Grace. Hank arrived just in time, throwing Dylan from the car and telling Grace to escape. Grace initially wanted nothing to do with Hank, but darkness gave the Ick new strength. It even invaded Hank's car engine. During their frantic getaway, an accident flipped the car, trapping them inside while the alien substance grew rapidly outside. Inside the wreck, Grace found an old photo of her mother in Hank's car and realized why he kept risking his life to protect her. He might be her father. The revelation left her stunned, unsure whether to believe it. As the Ick tried to break into the overturned car, Hank and Grace set a fire to hold it back. Grace called her cousin, whose car had strong lights, and together they escaped safely. The next morning, everything seemed calm again. Grace, however, was determined to learn the truth about whether Hank was really her father. Back at the bar, Hank thought he saw his late father, but it was only an illusion created by the Ick, trying to lure him into infection. Hank refused to be trapped. Meanwhile, Grace met Dylan, who appeared normal and apologized for the previous night. Hank arranged to meet Stacy on the school playground, hoping for a clear answer about Grace's parentage. Stacy avoided giving a straight response. As the sun set, the Ick suddenly rose from the ground and ended her life. Heartbroken, Hank even considered ending his own life, but a fallen net accidentally saved him. That night was prom night. Teens filled the dance floor while Hank wrapped himself in lights and stepped outside. On the way, he ran into Kim, warning him to leave, but Kim ignored the danger and was killed by the Ick. Hank rushes to the school, now under full attack. Inside, chaos reigns as the Ick's tentacles lash out, destroying everything and dragging people away. Dylan is about to get intimate with Grace when Hank bursts in. Grace finally sees Dylan's true, infected form. Together, she and Hank fight him off and end his life. Heather and Griffin join them as Hank realizes the playground's powerful lights could freeze the Ick. But to activate them, he must go outside. Grace is briefly confronted by the infected versions of her parents, yet the group manages to switch on the lights. The creature has grown enormous beneath the ground, and the light pole threatens to collapse. Survivors climb a nearby tower, while many fall victim to the Ick. Only Hank, Grace, Heather, and Griffin reach the top. As dawn breaks, sunlight freezes the monster until sudden clouds block the rays and the Ick surges again. Just as all hope fades, the sun reappears and the creature finally hardens, ending the attack. The Ick seems gone, perhaps only for now. Since this is ultimately a dark comedy, the film doesn't linger on strict logic. In the closing scene, Grace accepts Hank as her father. The long-awaited DNA test results finally arrive, but the film never reveals what they say. Hank and Grace simply stare at the report, surprised as the screen fades to black. It's really more of a comedy, so the plot might feel a bit thin on paper. But when you watch it, the movie is surprisingly entertaining and keeps you hooked with its quirky energy.